The year's 2020. It's my first semester at UT Austin. I was making new friends, studying filmography, and competing for my school's speech and debate team. On September 8th, during the second month of school, I felt a numbness in my pointer finger. It then spread to my hand, my arms, my legs, and within 7 days, I was completely paralyzed. I was admitted to the ER, and over the next few days, doctors ran every test imaginable on my body. MRI, CAT scans, nerve conduction therapy, and I was preemptively diagnosed with a rare disorder called GBS, or Guillain-Barré syndrome. By the end of the second week, my symptoms miraculously started fading away, but a follow-up appointment with a neurologist led to them diagnosing me with a functional neurological disorder. Basically, this is a blanket term suggesting some trauma or stressor had caused my body to shut down. My prescription: therapy. I was hesitant to go because of the stigma as a man to need emotional support, but I was a big fan of a content creator who offered life coaching. The advice in his videos was unique, practical, and it didn't focus on reliving one's past, but encouraged them moving forward toward their desires. By the end of the first call, he had convinced me to drop out of college, focus on my business, and 4 years later, I'm still lucky to call him my mentor.
You have an infinite number of flaws, and you have a finite number of skills. You can either work on the infinite problem, where you could get lost forever, or you could work on the solution.
A year ago today, I was paralyzed again, and he actually helped fix some of that, but we'll get on that in the podcast. If you guys have noticed, every guest thus far, I've asked them one question at the end. Who's the most impressive person you've ever met? Today's guest is not the most famous nor the richest, but I can genuinely attest with 100% certainty he is the most impressive.
This is gonna be a fun podcast.
Today's episode will be an amalgamation of the best advice, stories, quotes, and most challenging questions I've asked him in the past 1,356 days working together. Josh Terry, welcome to the Jack Neel Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me on.
I originally was going to start this with some of the more impactful lessons you've taught me, but reviewing some of our old conversations, something you said when I brought up the idea of making a podcast was, if you want a guest to get excited who is a thinker, you have to give them a complex question. So, one second.
Uh-oh.
I asked GPT-4 what questions Aristotle, Socrates, Marcus Aurelius, Nikola Tesla, and Sigmund Freud struggled with the most. I then cross-compared the similarities and made it into a two-part question. It's not that bad until you start to think about it. Is human nature fundamentally good or evil? And what drives human motivation?
Oh.
We can start with the first one. Is human nature fundamentally good or evil?
Okay. So I would start this without taking human nature into account. I would start by thinking about all the other things, which is all the things that humans use. Power, energy, thought processes, all of that stuff. Just the tools that are available to a human. Mm-hmm. And I would first get really clear on the fact that all of those things are neutral. Because the first thing you have to understand is like what are we actually looking at? What are we trying to observe? And it's what do you do with all of these tools, I think, is how we get to this point of like even beginning to answer that question. And with that in mind, with all of those other pieces being neutral, I would say humans at their core are solutions-oriented creatures. They want to survive and they want to pass on. And for that to happen, we have to be, I don't know, at least 51% good, at least 52% good. I think we have to be more good than evil, because those things, to survive and to pass on, to live a good life and to leave a legacy require like our value systems are built. Our value systems of good and bad are built according to the metric of survival and passing on. And so,
in order to survive, you have to be good.
Not necessarily. But our value system came from, if I do this thing and I survive, then I probably did something more good than bad. Like it's weighted in that direction, right? You surviving does not mean you're a good person, but how we come up with what is good and bad to some degree is based on our struggle for survival.
So at the very least, humans believe they are mostly good.
I think any other conclusion would be very destructive. Actually, I don't think. I know, because we can see it play out all over the place. But yeah, let me go into like a simple analogy for that thing of like our struggle for survival is good or bad. I love this topic because it's connected to why people struggle when they get successful.
Mm-hmm.
And the statement is the struggle for survival has a value system baked into it. And the analogy is, if you're somebody that's stuck on the street and you don't have any food, water, clothing, and shelter, and you struggle for the day and you get yourself a bowl of ramen somehow, then you did something successful. And so all of the actions that led up to getting that bowl of ramen are potentially good actions, right? You're a learning creature. You're constantly observing, trying to figure out what's right and what's wrong. And well, you got the bowl of ramen, you survived. And so those actions potentially were good actions, right? And so that's how our map for what is good and bad, what is right and wrong comes from to a large extent. And so when people get successful, that value system starts to become less relevant. And so people start to struggle. They start to get confused about what is right and wrong, what is good and bad, because they no longer have a value system baked in. But to answer your original question, are humans fundamentally good or bad? Well, I think we lean towards good because, at least according to humanity's definition, because humanity's definition came from how do we survive? Mm-hmm. And we're doing a pretty good job of surviving.
I think that's beautifully said, and I have no rebuttals to it. I think that also kind of answered what drives human motivation inherently. So I guess we'll transition here. So let's go into some of my favorite quotes of yours. And guys, just again, I have notes with Josh, meeting with him for the past 4 years. This is everything he said in one podcast. So you're getting 4 years of us taking time together for free. Pretty cool. But you said there are 2 ways to catch butterflies: build a really big net and swing, or build a beautiful garden.
This is going to be a fun podcast.
Did you forget saying that?
I forgot that I said that, but yes, I did say that.
Tell me about that quote.
So you can push or you can pull. In order to get something done, you can attack the problem, push through the problem, break through the problem. That's one way of looking at it. Or you can simply provide the solution that problem needs. And sometimes you need one solution, sometimes you need another. Like, there are times where you need to dominate and you need to break and you need to push through in order to get the result that you want to get.
Mm-hmm.
But if that becomes your lifestyle, it's going to get old. For some of you, it will wear you down, it will exhaust you. For others, it'll just get boring. Right? If you're the best in the world at winning and dominating all the time, eventually it'll just get old. And so you need to know that there are other ways to solve problems. And so the other way to solve problems is from a more relaxed standpoint. It's from an allowing standpoint. It's from a providing standpoint. It comes from sort of a gentler frame of mind, if you will. But it gets just as many results. And I think a place where this might start to make more sense, because I know I'm talking
to make
in
it more
vague
palatable,
terms.
I think relationships, networking are two.
Yeah.
This definitely applies
Yeah.
to.
So the way this applies in, say, relationships is, you can walk into an interaction with somebody you're interested in, and you can break down all their walls. You can use all the techniques that you know to break down their walls and solve the problem of attraction. You can completely fix that problem by force. It's doable.
You can talk to 100 women.
Yes.
And hopefully one of them likes you.
Yes. Or you can set up a situation where you are desirable. And this doesn't require you to break down walls. This doesn't require you to dominate a situation in the same way. You are still dominating your environment if you're creating an environment to set up a situation where you're attractive. It's a different form. But you're not breaking through everything. You're actually becoming an attractor. You can become magnetic.
Which is easier?
It depends.
Yeah.
Which, is that the most common phrase that I've said in our past 4 years?
It's probably the major theme.
It depends.
Have confidence, but not too much. Be strong, but not too much,
Correct.
Drink water, but not too much.
Correct. Yeah, and so one, you need to look into your own personality type. Are you a person who knows how to crush it and break through walls? Then that should still be the majority of your technique. That's how you should approach a lot of things. You should approach a lot of girls. You should try to get a lot of deals. Like if you're a dominator, if you're a breaker, break through all of the barriers that are in your way. Like, go ahead and do that. But remember that you are using one solution for everything, which is to break through these walls. Like, what is required for me to get a solution? I will do it. Whatever it takes, right? That's one way to approach life. But there is another way to approach life, which is to understand that there are solutions available to you all the time. There are opportunities coming to you all of the time. There are possibilities everywhere, and you can set yourself up so that the right possibilities come towards you. And
one of these is actually the masculine, and one of these is the feminine. And when
Correct.
both are combined, and you do both the things, that's when you become the most successful.
Correct. And so when I see guys that have a bunch of masculine energy, I say, good. Go be that. Don't try to be something else, but understand that there is something else.
I think an interesting part of this quote, too, is it doesn't say, if you want to catch butterflies, you can either swing a net 1,000 times or create a garden. It says you can either build a really big net or build a beautiful garden. Mm-hmm. So what does it mean to build a really big net versus, like, do you understand what I'm saying?
I think
like,
so.
It's not necessarily sheer force. It's a more sophisticated version of that.
Yeah, and I think what you're pointing towards is the fact that there is intelligence in the masculine and there is intelligence in the feminine. And a lot of us, I'm really glad that you pointed that out, because a lot of us like to create this image that masculine solutions, logical solutions, I mean, it's in the word that it should require intelligence, that masculine solutions are dumb and feminine solutions are wise. That's very common in media, in the way that people talk about these things. I know that a lot of people think everybody just needs to solve their problems by starting to embody more feminine energy. Like, that's going to fix everything. But the reality is there's an intelligence to both sides. And so in the building a really big net is you become a phenomenal executor. And by that, I don't mean you just keep hitting things. I mean you hit things in reps, and you get better at hitting things. You get better at your logical solutions. You get better at driving hard through things. And you develop skill, and you develop skill and nuance. That is one of the tools that's available to you, and within it, many, many millions of iterations.
I like how you said you develop skill and nuance. You did not say you build discipline. One of your videos, you say you think discipline is bullshit.
So discipline is how you get yourself to do a thing that you don't want to do. But how do you get yourself to do something that you don't want to do? Well, usually you find a higher reason, right? So you go, I don't want to go to the gym today. How do you discipline yourself into going to the gym? Well, you realize, I must go to the gym because I have these goals. Or go discipline. Well, what are those goals? Those goals are wants. They're your desires. So a lot of people in the self-development community want to talk about how important discipline is and how you need to set aside your desires and learn how to work harder and, use, delayed gratification. But the reality is you're just doing it for a higher desire. You're doing it for a higher purpose. And so fundamentally, you're still tapping into your motivation. These people that say discipline is key, motivation is bullshit, they're just tapping into higher motivation. They're tapping into their deeper selves, which is more desire. That's why I care so much about what people want.
Do you think people should do things they don't want to do?
At times. For one reason, you can do something that on one level you don't want to do, and on a higher level, you know that it will get you the result that you want. And there are times when that's the right thing to do to get the result that you want. And then there's other times when you might want to do it on faith, right? If your life is really fucked up and you find yourself just wanting to do a whole bunch of things that have been getting you really poor results, you might not feel like you want to do anything positive.
Mm-hmm.
And so in those moments, sometimes it's a good idea to go, these other people get these better results doing these things that I don't like. Maybe I should just operate on faith for a little while just to see if it works.
Yeah. I think of very people who've been at this stage, the lowest stages of depression, you could call it, won't even want to shower, but they know it's a good thing for them. So what would you say? You would say that faith is the important thing for those people?
Yeah. So this goes to one of my favorite things to talk about, which is the balance between faith and awareness, which I see as kind of masculine and feminine ways of looking at the world. Faith being a sort of masculine energy of, I'm going to focus on the highest goal and I'm just going to forget about everything else and just go towards it and let go of the rest until I get there. And then everything will work out, right? Straight line methodology. And awareness is, let me feel around everything around me and see what feels right. And then let me move from this place into a place that feels a little bit better until I realize what is better. And then I move towards that highest good, right? I build awareness to inform myself of the highest good. And so to bring this back to somebody who is in bed, they can't even get themselves to take a shower, you need to implement both methodologies. And the way you implement both methodologies is, one, you understand that, let me say it a different way. One is you put a point of faith in your mind to say, there is a way to get out of this. There is a way to move towards better. I'm going to just operate according to that belief. And then sometimes that's enough to get you out of bed. But other times you need to go, okay, let me implement the awareness side, which is, let me feel my body for a second. And I know that I can't get myself to take a shower right now. And so I'm going to just wiggle my finger. I've done something. I've taken action. Excellent. Okay, let me move my legs. All right. Can I roll onto the floor? Right? That's an option for somebody whose life has just really hit the bottom. Is can you go from the bed to the floor and then maybe roll around on the floor a little bit so you've got some motion?
An important part of this as well is the conscious thought of I am going to wiggle my finger than doing it. So you have this attachment to actually doing the things that you think and say. Because if you tell yourself, I'm going to roll on the floor, and you do it, and you wiggle your finger and you do it, and you wiggle your toe, and then you say, well, I'm going to try to turn on the shower at least. It makes yourself do it because you get in this pattern.
Yes, and every single one of those micro actions is a wrap on desire, thought, plan, action, result. And the more reps you get on that, the more powerful you become as a human. That's how you become a powerful human, is you give yourself reps on desire, plan, action, result. It's the scientific method.
Yeah.
But we all need to embody the scientific method in our minds. That's how we learn. That's how we grow. And so if you're at that point of struggling, you implement this long line of faith where you go like, I'm going to get to the shower, right? But then you go, I still can't move. You go, okay, well, goal is shower. You don't go, well, I can't reach my goal. I just give up. I'm going to stay here for another 10 days. You go, okay, what's the micro action that would get me towards that?
Yeah.
And it might just be move a finger. And if you can move a finger, you have won, because that is a rep that will move you towards the thing that you want, which leads me to one of my favorite phrases, which is the pathetic next best step. How can you take the pathetic next best step? If you can do that with your chest out, eventually you can win.
Yeah. I mean, I regularly implement this pretty much every day. If I want to get myself to go to the gym, it's a process of playing some music out loud on my phone and then going to get a water and then putting on gym clothes and then telling myself, I'm just going to walk in there. And then after I walk in there, I usually am like, might as well lift some weights, you know? But I do want to admit I use that process, and I'm someone who I would say has discipline or does things that I don't want to do regularly, but it works.
So do I. And I do it because it works. And within it is the path to excellence. And also why we fail at New Year's resolutions, right? We fail at New Year's resolutions because we're like, all right, I've had it. I am not fit. I'm going to get fit, right? This binary, I'm fat. I'm going to be skinny. I'm ugly. I'm going to be pretty. It's a binary decision. And then we go, okay, starting January 1st, this arbitrary day, I am now going to work out at this pattern for the rest of the year until I have a bikini body.
Yeah.
And then on week 3, you miss it and you go, oh, I'm such a failure. Well, I guess I'll have a pizza. And it's like, the reason why you're doing that is because you're only implementing actually the faith structure that I was talking about earlier of highest goal, that's all that matters. And I either reach the highest goal or bust. But then that opens the door to giving up.
Yeah.
And so how do you create a situation where you would never give up? If you want to never give up, then you implement a bottom-up methodology and a top-down methodology, which is, I need to get to the gym and I need to get healthy. I am missing days. Can I put on my gym clothes? Right? Tiny, tiny step. Okay, that's closer to the gym. And then top-down methodology is, I have a vision for what I want. I want to get fit. How can I do that? And so you need to constantly hold in your mind the end goal and the first action. And this is not to rant on longer, but this is why people struggle in the manifestation world. And I mean, it's why people struggle in a whole bunch of different worlds. But in the manifestation world, what they try to do is they try to only embody the end goal, right? I'm just going to be it. And then they don't think about the steps and they fall apart. right? And then other people, they only think about the work, and then they struggle.
I think an important part of this as well, I remember one of the first big realizations you taught me. I remember a few of these. But the second one was I was 19 and you familiarized me with this concept of, Jack, you are now your own parent, and you have to treat yourself as though you're a kid and you're a parent. And how would you raise a kid? If you wanted your kid to go to the gym, you would consider things like, oh, well, they probably can't go every day, but they could probably go 4 days a week. And then maybe one of those days, like, I'd probably have them play a sport with some other friends because they would enjoy that more and they would look forward to that. Maybe one of the days is not that hard in the gym. One of the days is super hard in the gym. You start thinking in a different mindset, one that's more realistic and one that actually considers one's desires instead of just, I'm going to do this thing consistently every day. We assume that we can do much more than we can, and we don't treat ourselves as though we're a child almost.
The other way that I phrase the pathetic next best step is, what's the next realistic best step? And if you had a kid who's never set the table before, and you want to teach them to set the table, you aren't going to start by giving them grandma's china.
Yeah.
And a bunch of beautiful crystal glasses for them to break. What you're going to do is you're going to say, hey, Tommy, we really need your help. This is actually going to take an extra half hour for us to eat dinner, but the kid doesn't know this, right? And so you go, we really need your help. The family needs you to step out here. Do you think you could set the table? You've been seeing mom and dad do this for a while. And he's like, now he's stoked. He's like, oh yeah, this is a good idea. I can do this. And then you give him a plastic spoon. You give him 5 plastic spoons. And you say, can you put these 5 plastic spoons around the table? He says, absolutely. And then he puts one at the seat of each chair. Yeah. And you're like, good job, Tommy. That's a great start. Now could you get them on the table?
Yeah. That's the important part. I think a lot of people will be like, really? The chairs? You've been like watching me do this for years. Like, you should at least be able to put these on the table,
But no.
That's my first initial response as like a business owner with employees. But you need to reward them for trying, I suppose.
Yep. And it's because actually the realistic next step is baked into how we work, right? When we're starting to learn how to walk, we start with crawling, right? And so the chair is Tommy's height. And so Tommy reaches up and sets the spoon on the chair because it makes sense.
Yeah.
It's the same gesture that the parent made at the height of the table. And so Tommy puts it on the chair.
Yeah.
And, you're as a parent, you're like, all right, well, we've started. And then, eventually you get to the point where there's a spoon and a knife and a paper plate and the food is cold, but you eat it anyways. And you thank Tommy very, very much for how helpful he was. And then now Tommy is a part of the team and he's grown and he's learned and he's going to do more tomorrow. And you in your day-to-day life, you say, well, I guess I should start a business tomorrow. Or like, well, I guess I'm going to get into painting and I guess I better make beautiful paintings now. It's like, no, like, can you make a sale? Can you make a product? Can you make an offer? Can you take a brush and make squiggles on a page? And can you praise yourself for it? Not because of any woo-woo positive manifestation about having, positive vibes everywhere, but because of plain behavioral science of if you get a positive result, you'll want to get more positive results. And so can you do a small thing that you would get a positive result on so that you become capable of doing the next bigger thing?
Another quote of yours, this was a few years ago. It's scary to do the things you need to do, but imagine the alternative.
Different people have framed this different ways. I love the way Jordan Peterson framed it, which is there's a wolf at every door. And it's the idea of, look, you got to get out of the house and you're in this mentality of looking for the safe route. But there's actually a wolf you have to battle at every door. So pick your door. And this is terrifying and the most liberating thing you can experience. Because if there is a safe option and you don't know about it, you're doing the wrong thing and you need to go find it. But if there is no safe option, then, this is just the game that you get to play. This is the game of life. And so if you want to get yourself taking more action, you need to get in a place where you understand that there's no perfect answer. There's no answer that's going to solve all of your problems. And every solution available to you is going to come with additional problems.
Taking no action is an action itself.
And taking no action is the worst one. And so as a result, you need to take one of them. You need to choose the problem, right? And so if you start to see that all options contain problems, you can then start to see that you not taking an action is an even bigger problem, right? They're all problems. It's fine. Take one.
Create systems that increase your cool factor over time.
Yeah. Do that. I've done a lot of deep work on myself. You know, I've studied the philosophies. I've studied having higher motivations and all of that stuff. And so far as I can tell, people really like being cool, getting rich, being hot, getting laid, making a lot of money. That matters. And ignoring it is ignoring reality. And when you start to ignore reality, you start to make mistakes.
Someone like Elon Musk, I feel like he's really optimized for that kind of ideology, increasing his cool factor all the time. It seems like pretty much every action he takes leads to raising his status or in some way making him just cooler and more interesting. Why do you think someone like him is so unhappy?
I don't know if he is.
He claims to be, but under what framework do you think he's operating that he thinks that's the case?
So Elon Musk is blessed or cursed with a powerful mind. And a mind like that needs to be used or it will be dissatisfied. And so he knows that, thank God. And so he uses it.
Mm-hmm.
But his mind operates at a level that for it to be used effectively, he kind of has to take himself through the ringer.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think in his case, and this isn't the case for most people, I think in his case, he's probably struggling mostly because he takes himself through the ringer. He pushes himself really, really hard. And a lot of people struggle because they need to push themselves harder.
What's the takeaway from pushing yourself through the ringer? Like, is that something you should still do?
So Elon is a fundamentally optimistic person, for sure. But I'm not sure if he implements enough positive thought process in his own brain, which is extremely difficult. Especially because most of us use negative thoughts to get us to our first successful outcomes, like we push ourselves. But there is a certain point where you get diminishing returns on negativity. And his beliefs for sure are optimistic. But I don't know if he's surrounding himself with enough positivity to support him. Like he's doing amazing things for the world. And so he should get the good things that come with it. And I found that if people don't balance those things correctly, they struggle with happiness.
I was maybe going to ask, do you believe Elon Musk do you think Elon's frustrated by the lack of competency around him?
Probably. Yeah. I don't know Elon, so I don't want to assume what's in his brain. And regardless, he's an amazing human being. But yeah, like fundamentally frustration with the world around him not shaping to his vision fast enough is likely one of the biggest pain points for him. But on the point I was saying about positivity and all of that, there's a phrase that I like to use around this, which is a king must get his just rewards. And the reason why I use this phrase is to say people who take on leadership need to be compensated. And I'm not just talking about money. He's got plenty of that. That doesn't matter. They need to be compensated in value, basically be compensated energetically for the energy that they output. Or things get mixed up. Things get out of balance. The reason why is because the only difference between a king and a slave is the fact that one gets rewarded, right? So a king has taken on the responsibilities for the kingdom, and in order to maintain his place, he must do what is required for the kingdom, which is what Elon has done. Elon has chosen to take responsibility for a large set of things in the world, and in order for him to maintain that place, he must do what is required to maintain those systems. And so he has taken on a job of requirement. And if his brain, his body, his nervous system does not get back the set of things that are, let's call it, of equal value, then his system's going to get his system's going to get out of balance. And so this could be love, right? It could be cuddles. It could be food. It could be praise and recognition from the people around him. It could be people doing what he needs. It could be any number of things. And yes, there's all sorts of ways for this to get out of whack and for somebody who's taken on responsibility to get spoiled and ask for too many things. But what I've found is a lot of people sacrifice too much. I'm going to rephrase that. A lot of people sacrifice without making sure that they get the things that they need. A lot of people sacrifice. They choose to take on really positive, healthy sacrifices that will make the world a better place without also choosing to take what they need in order to become their best selves.
I want to transition here to a bit of your backstory. So we started working together 4 years ago. You'd been coaching when we met for roughly 8 months, something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
It was October 30th was our first call, or October 31st of 2020. Prior, you were a teacher, yeah?
Yeah, I was a music teacher.
For 8 years?
Yep.
8 years. And you worked with elementary school kids?
From usually ages like 3 to 99, but most of them were like 9 to 16.
Gotcha. Interesting. We might go more into that as it pertains to your learning and your patience in general. But I think what's really interesting about you is I would probably call you a savant. You went to college when you were 15.
Correct.
Tell me about that.
Well, I went to college when I was 15. I was homeschooled kid, and I was the good points about that were that I was allowed to explore whatever I wanted, and I was a super curious kid, and so I explored all sorts of topics. And with college, if you can pass the tests, you can get in, and so I passed the tests, and I got in. And I started studying. And so I went to college from age 15 to 22. I only got a bachelor's degree at that time because at that time I didn't realize that people cared about money and status and looking cool and all that stuff. I just wanted to learn cool stuff. And so I didn't try to get degrees. I just took classes. And I took a lot of classes. I remember age 20 showing a friend of mine that was a master's student my record, And she's like, you've taken way more courses than I have. And she was going for a master's at that time. I just enjoyed studying. And that was also where I learned how to become a workaholic. I got really good at working.
How many books would you say you were reading on average, like as a kid, like a year or a day?
I have no idea. I know I've read hundreds, if not thousands of books. I was a total bookworm when I was a child.
When I had Ty Lopez on the other week, I think he calculated maybe about 3,000 books for himself. Do you think you're around there as well?
I suspect I'm a bit lower than Ty Lopez because I didn't maintain it in adulthood at the level that Ty has. Ty kind of maintained the pattern of reading for a very, very long time. Yeah. I kind of stuffed it all in early. But yeah, love reading.
Yeah, I do want to, we'll transition a bit into some of the more viral topics you've talked about, but I just want to give the viewers like some interesting facts I've learned about you over the years, and I want you to contribute anything you might find interesting. So when I first met you, I kind of assumed you were like some computer programmer dude who's just like really smart and read a lot. You made a lot of videos in the past about like graphs and Excel and numbers, and I was like, oh, this guy's like very logical. But over time, I've been like, oh, this is like actually more of a emotional, creative individual. So you used to make music. Can't you like, you can balance on a ball and play the violin or something along those lines?
That was a thing. Yeah. So, I mean, I'll start towards the beginning. When I was age 9, I got a violin for my birthday. And like I said, I got to just explore all sorts of topics. And so I did, from botany to chicken nomenclature to physics and art, visual art. I studied three-dimensional art. I studied painting, wood carving, drawing, and music. Music was the one that I was the most passionate about. I fell in love with film scoring really early on, and I hoped to become either a rock star or a film composer. And I just got obsessed with all of the fascinating things in the world. And as a result, I just learned quickly. And college was just more of that. By the time I got out of college, I was a burnout. I'd worked so hard that I mentioned earlier, like, you need to get the rewards back for the amount of work that you do. Yeah. I wasn't really getting the rewards back. Key, at that time, I didn't know anything about money. And so one of the saddest days of my life was graduation day. When I graduated college and everyone was celebrating, I was walking down the aisle going, oh shit, I didn't do this right. Because I went to a rich kid's school and got up to my eyeballs in student debt to do it. Because I thought maybe I'd learn something about how to be successful. And then they told me to study hard, so I did. I was also a very obedient kid when I was young. And then I just stuffed myself into a room and studied and practiced and studied and practiced. And then I walked down the aisle of graduation and I realized, oh, all these rich kids with daddy's Ferrari, they all met each other and they're all going to give each other jobs. And I just did what I was told, which is not how you win. And so that was the saddest day of my life. So I was burnout. By that, I mean, I just couldn't get myself to do anything at first. I just slept for like 4 weeks. And then I went to Austin, Texas and slept for another week. And then I got out of my house and I turned left. And I walked into the first business and I said, do you have a job application form? And they gave it to me and I said, thanks. And I walked back home and shook it off because that made me really uncomfortable and nervous, and ate lunch. And then I walked to the next business because I was too embarrassed to go back to the first one. I walked to the next one and I filled out the job application form. And they, of course, didn't look at it at all. And they said, can you sweep floors, you skinny white boy? Yeah. And I was like, I can sweep floors. And I said, great, you're hired. So I got a job at a wire rope construction company, and I worked in the construction industry for 2 years. After that, I got into music teaching. I was in like 5 bands at the same time, and I became a music teacher. So I was trying to figure out how music worked in the music scene, and I was keeping myself alive by, teaching kiddos. But all of this was the art world, right? Like I studied art, I lived art, I breathed art. And now today, you say that like you see me as a practical guy. What I found is I educated myself in the art world while also working to become a practical person. And so I've become this person who kind of can step into the middle ground between the woo-woo spiritual shadow self and artistic thought process and all of the things that are kind of ethereal or mystical to a logical person. And I can make it make sense to them.
Yeah.
And so
that's the thing about you. You think so creatively and abstractly, but it comes out so logically that one might assume that you're a logical human.
Yeah. And so I start feeling first. Like when somebody asks me a question, I get a feel for the answer, and then I translate that into a logical communication. And part of that is my upbringing. I just got a really good education. That's part of my understanding of logic. Part of it was the conservatism. I grew up in a conservative family, and so that makes you lean logic. And then also I got really good at communication because I was teaching for 8 years. Also, I became the lead instructor at that construction job as well. Like teaching is just what I am. And so I got really good at communication. And so it's put me in this really amazing place where I get to work with really elite people that are very logical usually, very hard driving and practical people who need a boost from the other side. Mm-hmm. They need a boost from that place where great ideas are born.
Yeah.
But they're not quite sure how to get there. Because if you want to get to that place where great ideas are born, you have to dive into the unknown and be okay with it. You have to be okay with something not making sense for a while. You have to feel what it feels like. You have to reach into the abyss and grab a bunch of chunks of dust and go like, what is all this stuff? It's strange and it's poetry. And, that doesn't always make sense to a 9-figure business owner. But if you can talk through it, you can get to a place where there's something new that you can integrate into a logical system and create really powerful results.
Just to, before we go into some of your direct philosophies and I ask you some questions, I do want to establish more credibility of yourself as you're maybe not as known as our other guest, but still vastly more credible, in my opinion. Same level as well. But
thank you.
Josh, so up until you make a very good living right now, I won't disclose your numbers, but how old are you?
I'm 34.
You're 34. Until you were 30, what would you say was the average income you made in a year?
Yeah, I was living on the poverty line. And I was making between $27,000 and $30,000 a year.
So you made $30,000 a year until 2020, about?
Around there, yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. For reference, when I started working with Josh, I think it was maybe $60 or $70 an hour.
I can tell that story.
Because now Josh charges thousands of dollars an hour for his time. So I was lucky to get in early. I do have to adjust my rate. We're not that close. It can't be that OG rate, but yeah, he's doing quite well for himself. And he coaches people who are doing even better than him. It's kind of like that old RuPaul quote, I knew I was going to be a star before I ever was. And that's kind of how I've seen Josh. And as I've evolved, thanks to him, I've seen him evolve, but his is vastly going to grow more. So yeah, you've coached people that make tens of millions of dollars a year. Is that right?
Correct.
And Do you
Hundreds.
think hundreds? Do you think those people see you as smarter than them?
Yes.
I would say so. So cool. I would agree. I see Josh as way smarter than myself, and I have been some 23-year-old that has somehow made more money than him in some years of my life. But what were you saying?
I just want to also say that you don't have to be smarter than somebody in order to help them get good results. You need to be a good counsel. And there are people smarter than me that are terrible counsels. And to make that real, the simplest analogy is you never want to learn math from somebody who's naturally good at math. Because if somebody is naturally good at math, they didn't think through all of the struggles required to learn a concept. They just looked at it and they went, oh, that makes sense. I'll do it that way. And so when they're up at the front of the lecture hall trying to tell you what to do, and you go, hey, this didn't make sense. They go, oh, that's easy. You just do it this way. And then you go, well, that didn't make sense either. And they go, well, I can't help you. It's just that way. That's who you don't want to learn from. You want to learn from somebody who struggled with math, and you raise your hand and you say, I don't understand how you got to that solution. And you want the teacher to go, oh man, I get it. I remember that just not making sense at all. Let me show you how it works.
Yeah.
And so I have thought through a lot of the things in my life because I've had a lot of struggles. I've had a lot of times in my life where things didn't make sense. I had a lot of times in my life where I followed typical advice and it didn't work. And so I had to break down why it didn't work for me, why it didn't work for my psychology, why it didn't work for that situation. And then I had to think through and go, oh, I see, this works sometimes. And here's the solution that you need here in this moment. And
on the math thing, I do want to say that was actually a big reason for me reaching out to you initially. And Josh and I are close, so he's not going to be offended by me saying this. But so like me, I have never seen myself as naturally talented. Like I think that there are probably some things you could point out that I do have natural tendencies for, but I was a very, very good actor at one point. I was very good at poetry at one point, but none of these things came naturally to me. In my sophomore year of high school, I was like a national speech and debate or acting champion in the country, but a few years before that, in 5th grade, I couldn't make like my high school like Christian Christmas musical. Like I couldn't even get a background role because they just like were like, oh, this kid doesn't know what he's doing at all. And there've been a lot of things like that. I look vastly different than I did a few years ago. So I kind of had this concept instilled in me that you should only learn from someone who things don't come to, that they have to get them and build that life for themselves. And I didn't know how tall you were before meeting you in person, but I mean, how tall are you roughly? I don't know if you could say that.
oh man, you're gonna make me look short on this podcast?
Well, I mean, I think it'll make you look better in this context.
I'm 5'6".
Josh is 5'6". You know the whole thing about girls need a guy who's 6 foot. Most millionaires in the U.S. are 6 foot white guys named John. Josh is 5'6". He wears glasses, so he's kind of seen as a nerd or whatever. And like I was like, was a music teacher before this, and he knows all of these things. If this guy is finding success, then he actually has information. If this man is better than women than I am, like in his position, then he must have like built this, and you'll continue to build. But that's just a big reason that you've been believable to me. And it's the thing with like a lot of pickup artists. It's like, if you're teaching guys how to pick up girls, you can't be looking like Leonardo DiCaprio. It's not believable,
Yeah, I got where I am through my blood, sweat, and tears. And I got where I am from things not working and having an extremely strong desire for them to work and sorting through it until it worked.
And on that, maybe I'll just go ahead and touch on this. Like eating Oreos almost killed you. Like you have some chronic health issues as well. And like you pretty much live on a diet now of like beef and salt. You've added some other things, but like you have so many struggles compared to the average successful person in your position.
Yeah. When I was at my worst, I had chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia. I was sick every single week. I was depressed. I was OCD. I had I was up to my eyeballs in student debt. My closest friend had just shot himself in the head, and I had to pick up the rent because that's real life. And I couldn't eat anything because everything made me sicker. And so, yeah, one of the things that I did to get myself out of that was I ate beef, salt, and water for 14 months. And it saved my life.
Yeah.
Amongst many, many other things that I learned to do. But yeah, that was a big
One
piece.
of my favorite quotes on this. When you're looking for the edge of human excellence, do not look to the naturally talented. Look to those who are hungry, who have something they are chasing or something that's chasing them. Only then can you find the maximum of human potential.
Yeah, look to the people that aren't winning by luck. Look to the people that are optimizing for luck, because they are optimists and they know that it's out there, and God damn it, they will keep trying until they find it. And so you can see it if you look for it. You can see the people that are doing the work. And those people have things to share that are so far beyond anything, some lucky person that just won thinks is wisdom.
How have you learned so much?
I suffered. And I stayed curious. And I want to be really clear, I don't think it's all suffering. I had an open mind and I wanted to learn. And I really believe in better.
You also studied learning.
Yes. So when I was in college and I was taking all of those courses, I started to ask myself, how do I get A's? Which is an interesting question. I stopped asking myself, how do I get an A? And I started asking myself, how do I get A's? Like, what would just make me win at classes? Because that was the playground that I was in at that moment. And I started to realize that there was a set of things that would help you integrate information and learn skills. I actually remember walking down the humanities department and it hit me. And I realized, the fundamental aspects of learning are connect every fact you know to every other fact you know and apply every fact you know. And if you can do this, you will become more powerful. What this is to explain what those two things are, connect every fact you know is learn how to associate the new thing that you learn with something else that you already know, right? So when a baby starts his existence seeing a big blob in front of them and starting to identify that that's mama's face, and then they start to learn that there's hands and fingers, the way they start to integrate that information is they start to see that they're kind of connected, right? Like, face is mama and hand is mama, right? There's a connection there, right? And that is a piece of how you remember things. A really practical version of this is, let's say you're learning how to fix a car, right? And you need to learn tools. So first, you need to learn one thing. This is a hammer, right? Okay, so that's one fact. But how do you teach a child that fact? Well, that kid has been hitting things with rocks since they were a baby. And so you go, You use this to hit things, just like you use those rocks. Connecting facts. Okay, now hold the hammer and go hit something. That's application, right? So connect every fact you know to every other fact you know and apply every fact you know. And what this does is it creates the magical network for your brain to latch onto everything and to solidify it, right? So connection allows you to latch on and keep the information, and application allows you to reinforce it and turn it into a skill set. And these ways of looking at the world, understanding these overarching learning theory concepts, are a big part of how I was able to collect so much knowledge and keep it, is because there are overarching principles of how you absorb knowledge.
Why do you think most people forget what they learn in school? It's kind of what you just said, but in another way of saying it, perhaps.
Yeah, most people forget what they learn in school because most of it's useless to them. And I mean that in the most practical sense, where they don't use it. And so if you want to maintain something, you have to use it. And I didn't use calculus once I got out of school. But I'll tell you, I know people that work in shops that use calculus and they remember calculus. And there are people that work in hedge funds that use calculus and they remember calculus.
This is kind of exposing myself, but do you think people who do remember random facts that they learned in school remember that because they put it into practice telling people and they feel that they get some type of status from it? So it is useful in that way. Do you think that's most of it?
Absolutely. You will remember what has utility to you.
Yeah. Because I remember the quadratic formula because people are like, how the fuck do you remember that? And I remember it because people are like, how the fuck do you remember that? You know?
That is a great reason to remember something, is because it's cool.
One of the first concepts I remember you teaching me was rubber band theory. What is rubber band theory? And how does it relate to LeBron James?
If you are below your standards, meaning you are heavier than you think you should be, if you aren't showing up to work the way you think you should show up, if you aren't behaving in the way you believe you should behave, there is pressure naturally for you to raise your standards of behavior to a different level. Meaning if there's like a rubber band that has been pulled down that is pulling you up because you know you're not doing what you need to do. And so to go from -1 to 0, there's actually a natural assist of your own reality, your own story about how you should behave in the world that's supporting you. But if you get to that standard, right? You were like 40 pounds overweight and then you got 10 pounds overweight and you fixed that story because you were like, I know I shouldn't be 40 pounds overweight. That's terrible. I feel guilty about this. I'm going to lose some weight. And you get to the point where you're only 10 pounds overweight. Well, now you're close to where your story is of who you are and who you naturally should be and what's acceptable. And so there's no more pressure because that rubber band has lifted up and the energy is equalized. And for you to get to 0 pounds overweight or start to lose weight beyond that to where you're trying to get cut, it's like you're starting to push that rubber band upwards and create new tension. Now you're trying to push past what your normal reality would be. And so to put this in monetary terms, if you are working at a normal middle-class job and then you go into deep debt and you lose your job and you spend all the money in your checking account, there is immense pressure for you to push yourself to get back to a middle-class wage, out of debt, back to the normal place, because that's your reality of what you're used to being. But for you to then go beyond and say, you know what, I'm going to save even more. I'm going to work on my off hours to create this side hustle. I'm going to start a new business. That creates an immense downward pressure. Yeah. That is harder because that's not your reality.
There's friction when you try to grow past your story of yourself.
Correct. And so this is why a lot of people will get to a pretty high level of success and then crash back down is because they are getting to that high level of success under immense pressure. They don't feel like they deserve it. They don't feel like they should be there. They feel like it's unearned. They feel like there's just some wrongness about it because their story is that they're the guy that grew up in the hood, or they're the guy that has a middle-class job. Like, whatever the story is, there's a story that they have that says, this is where I am. This is who I am. And so, therefore, this is where I should be.
So you explained to me, like, people like LeBron have so much pressure, so much, like, trauma, negative things in their life that it almost creates, like, a pulling effect and makes them push way past it so they escape and never try to go back. Can you explain that concept?
Yeah, and so people like LeBron or Alex Hormozy, a lot of these people, I think David Goggins might be a good example of this. They had so much pressure from having the negative side pushing them up that they just said, I'm never going to go there again. And also, that negative push upwards to the positive is kind of cemented into them. It's a part of their reality now, where there's no height that I can go to that will ever be enough. This rubber band that's pulling me upward, it has to keep pulling me upward. The only thing that would be wrong is to stop moving up. And so that's how some of these stars get to stardom, is through that push. Now, I want to add, that's not how a lot of people get to a high level. That's how some of our superstars that make really cool stories get to a high level. For a lot of us, what we have to do is we have to learn how to change our reality. Is not have a rubber band that's constantly in the negative trying to push ourselves upwards, or not try to push against that reality that feels like it isn't us. What we have to do is we have to move the rubber band. And we have to get to a place where we go, oh no, I'm actually supposed to be a successful person. This is my job.
How do you grow past your story of yourself?
Action, iteration, belief. And so if you want to change your reality, you need to take an action that is outside of your reality. This is the uncomfortable part. And then you need to iterate on that action in a way that changes your belief. And so there are moments of discomfort that you have to take, but then you need to take those moments of discomfort in a way that they reinforce your new reality.
What is paperclip theory?
Well, the paperclip theory is a thought experiment meant to consider whether or not artificial intelligence is dangerous. And the theory is, what if you created an AI and then you told it to make paperclips? You said, that's your prime directive. And then this AI hit superintelligence and it maintained that prime directive. Well, first it would start with all of the available metal in the world. And then it would finish using all of the available metal and it would go, well, I'm supposed to make paperclips. This is what I do. This is my meaning and purpose in life. Kind of like the Rick and Morty, your purpose in life is to serve butter, which I love. It's like, okay, I'm just going to make paperclips. And so it's like, well, okay, let's start mining all other minerals to make paperclips. Oh, let's start enslaving all the humans and help them in my mission to make paperclips. Oh, well, let me find a way to convert all human matter into paperclips, and we'll just have a universe of paperclips floating in the sky. That's the paperclip theory. I think it's a good thought exercise. I don't think that we're going to become paperclips anytime soon.
I would talk more about it, but I'm a little dilapidated by all the AI talk as I have no control over it. Josh?
Can I, on that point?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would love to share my thought on AI disaster.
Yeah.
Which is, I see it as an asteroid problem, or what I call an apocalypse problem. There are a set of problems that could occur to humanity that are so big and so game-changing that they're irrelevant to the average person. And what I mean by that is you cannot prepare for an apocalypse by creating a bunker that has a bunch of canned beans in it. The only way you could prepare for an apocalypse is become more adaptable. In game theory, what this would be is become capable of playing better games, playing new games, different games. And so if the AI disasters come about, our world will be so fundamentally different that it will simply be a new game. And you will have to decide how you're going to play that new game when it comes. And so the way, in my mind, to cope with the existential fear of something like AI, for most people, is to simply go live your life, but do it well. Live the best life you possibly can. Become the smartest that you can. Become the most successful that you can. Become the most adaptable that you can. And that gives you the highest chance of being good if the apocalypse should appear. But don't go spend your life strategizing for the apocalypse, because the apocalypse is a new game. I'm going to add one other point on AI. That's my apocalypse theory. My opinion is AI is phenomenal and inevitable. We are living in a world of people. And in the beginning of this talk, you asked me if I think people are fundamentally good or evil. With that as like positive or negative. I think they lean towards the positive. And people who lean towards the positive want to progress. They desire progress. And so to me, this is a thing that we want to move towards because there's opportunity there. And so I think that it's going to happen. And I think we will do our best to make it good because that's what we want.
It's hard to argue with you as you've been my coach, and a lot of your frameworks just make sense to me. But Josh, how do you get someone to stop lying to you?
Teach them. This is so important. If you want somebody to behave with honesty around you, you have to reward them for honesty. And this is so difficult because most of the places where we want someone to be honest with us are around things that might upset us, right? What did you do with that guy over there? Did you act on that business deal correctly? Right? Those are the places where we really value honesty, right? Is places where it could be questioned. And what often happens is somebody then tells us what they did with that guy. They tell us what they did in that business deal. And it's something that we didn't like, and then we get upset. So what was the reward for honesty? Well, a negative result. And so...
You think you should thank someone for lying to you?
No.
And telling the truth.
You should thank someone for telling the truth. So you're starting with the assumption that they were lying and now they're telling the truth. And so your mind jumped, which is what everybody does. Your mind jumped to, this is already a big problem. And so what I just described is a bunch of kind of extreme outlier cases of somebody was lying, they were doing a bad thing, and they told you a truth, and then you got upset. I'm trying to paint that picture because it shows the negative outcomes that people get from telling the truth. Right?
This is the only point that I'm going to challenge you on, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
I said I could argue with you on the last one, but I forgot this is the one. I feel like there has to be some negative repercussion, though, to if you lied to me about something serious and you came to me with the truth, and I just say, Josh, thank you for telling me.
Yes.
As opposed to, Josh, this is deeply concerning. I don't understand why you've done things like this. Like, I think that would only coddle someone into lying more if you reacted positively.
So you are correct. Once bad behavior has already occurred. And so you're getting caught up in the drama that's at the end of a relationship. But where honesty needs to start is at the very beginning of the relationship, in the first moments, on your first date, in your first conversation. And what this looks like is somebody, for example, has a feeling that they're hesitant to share, right? Like maybe they're in a negative mood and they feel self-conscious about bringing the mood down. And so, you ask them how they're doing and they go, "Oh, I'm fine," right? If that's the end of it, then you have a great date. What happens is they got a positive result for lying. It worked.
Let's put this in practice. So if I tell you, Josh, I think your beard's stupid. I know your response would be something along the lines of, "Thank you for telling me. What could I do to improve it?" And then we'd have that conversation and you'd be like, "Oh, by the way, in the future, I would appreciate if you would communicate that in a bit of a different way." Is that...
I mean, we've gotten enough shorthand now that I would say that was kind of a dick move.
Yeah.
But I like my beard. I'm getting self-conscious.
I like it.
You
too.
like my beard?
I like
Okay,
your
good.
beard. I picked something that I think the best characteristic for the example.
Okay, so somebody in this example that I described, let's call it a first date. Somebody, like, they have the feeling that like they're in a mood that if they brought it up, like it would create problems. And so they kind of hide that, and then there's a wonderful first date. Now, sometimes that's appropriate because you don't want to just lay your shit out on top of it people all the time. But if you're trying to get a good connection with somebody and there's a valid thing going on in their brain and you encourage them to tell it to you and they're afraid that it's going to upset you, and then they tell you and you respond with, "Wow, thanks for telling me. Let's sort through that and have an even better experience." Now, they got a positive result from telling you a truth that they were hesitant to share. And so if you then habituate that, you make that the norm, that every time somebody tells you the truth, they get a positive result, they're going to want to keep telling you more truths. And what I want to do is I want to separate this from a person's positive or negative actions. That's a different question. Whether or not somebody did the right thing or not is different from whether or not they told you the truth or not. And so you have to train the behaviors separately.
This is to get someone to stop lying to you, not to stop behaving negatively.
Yeah, it's a different problem. And they get mixed up because oftentimes somebody engages in a negative behavior and then they hide it. Engage in a negative behavior and they hide it. And each time they hide, they lie, right? But those two actions are not the same action. They're different actions. And so if you want to start having positive, healthy, honest conversations, you have to start rewarding honesty. How do you do that? Well, like I said, you start at the beginning of the relationship, because if you start at the end, it's going to be really hard, because it's like it's really hard to start with, giving a positive response with like, "Hey, honey, what did you do last night?" "Oh, I was with like 3 black guys." It's like, that's a little hard to stomach with, "Oh, thank you so much for telling me," right? That's not necessarily the way to approach that. But if you start with like, "Hey, I wasn't sure what I was supposed to do here, so I did this thing and I think it was wrong." If that's the sentence that your partner says, then you say, "Thank you so much for checking in. Thank you so much for telling me that."
Yeah.
And now the behavior of honesty has been set. Where does this pay off? It pays off deeper into the relationship, where you start to get to those potential extreme behaviors of, like somebody cheating on you, somebody, cheating on you in business, somebody cheating on you in a relationship, these sorts of things, where if the habit of honesty is already established, now people don't want to do things that would require dishonesty because they're in the habit of honesty and people don't like to change behavior. And so it allows you to create more alignment in your relationship where you would never get to the point where somebody would cheat on you because the issues are corrected way beyond that, way before that. Because, you know, the girl, for example, let's say, you know, it's the extreme version is the girl cheating on you. The more mild version of this is the girl feels safe telling you that she is not satisfied. And you go, oh, thank you so much for telling me. Yeah. I was just really obsessed with this project over here, and I wasn't really thinking about that. And now you know, and you go, great, we can fix this. And so you never get to the point where those extreme behaviors would happen. That's what rewarding honesty is all about.
I think that's one of your best pieces of relationship advice. Not to do a gotcha question, but Josh, do you lie?
Here and there, I've lied. I think the main ones are white lies, but not many.
What's a white lie to you?
Like random polite moment, like, hey, how you doing? Good. Which is like, obviously that I was just talking about how in a deep relationship, that's not the best thing. But I mean, daily walking through life, you know, random person you meet at the convenience store. Sometimes I don't feel like telling them my entire life story if I'm in a down mood. So I say I'm good.
Yeah. Do you lie to someone if it's for their best interest?
Oh, man. I can't remember many instances where I have. I really believe in setting up a situation where it's in one's best interest to be honest. And I really believe in edge cases and gray areas. There are. And I think that somebody who believes black and white, you must not lie ever, is more likely to get caught in a dangerous lie than somebody who doesn't, because it's so binary. It'll mess with your brain and mess with your behavior. I believe in understanding that lies sometimes occur, but there is vast utility in honesty, and so you want to set up your life and set up your bias so that you lean towards it.
I'm guessing I don't, but I'm guessing you don't believe in full disclosure.
Oh, yeah, your brain is your own brain. Nobody else has a right to that shit.
I like that. Balance. When you learn something, you often have to learn the opposite
cussing
thing.
Okay?
Yeah, you're fucking good.
Cool. Right. Great.
On balance, you say when you learn something, you often have to learn the opposite thing.
Yeah, so you know how, like, you need to learn how to be patient? If you become the most patient person, eventually you're probably going to turn into a doormat because you're willing to wait for anything. And you know how you need to learn how to control your anger? Well, if you learn to control your anger completely, then eventually you're going to need to learn how to say a harsh word because that's what's required for the moment. Mm. And so everything, especially in self-development, that you learn eventually requires you to learn the opposite thing. And it's just a basic fundamental of polarity. We all have to maintain balance. Life is not built out of specific solutions. It's built out of extremes that you learn to balance.
I like that one. That one has held very true for me, especially recently. Let's talk about last year at this time. I got a Snapchat memory today that it was my girlfriend at the time pushing me in a wheelchair to the hospital. I made a call to you, and you were very grateful or generous and flew out to California. And you kind of helped unparalyze me a little bit in some ways. Can you just talk about that experience and like your analysis of it overall. This doesn't have to be like a clip necessarily, but just what were your philosophies? How did you go in? For context, no doctor was ever able to figure out what was wrong with me. And you were the only person that had some type of solution, actually.
Yeah, we restored some functionality to your arms. You want me to describe like what I did?
Maybe before describing what you did, why you chose to do it, the things you observed.
Yeah, so what's the easiest way to describe this? So I came in and you were not able to make a lot of motions that a person normally would make. But then every once in a while, I would see you make an unconscious motion with the same limb that you were having trouble moving, and you'd make it fluidly.
Like I couldn't move my arm, but maybe there's something in my eye and I just went like that.
Yeah. So like, for example, you wouldn't be able to pick up a hamburger, but you would cough and you'd naturally hold your hand to where you were going to cough. Right? And to me, that was a dead ringer for there was something going on in the mind-body connection. And that there was something in even potentially the mindset that was potentially affecting the body. And I don't know that that's all that was going on, but that seemed to be a dead ringer for a link there.
Yeah.
And so what I did was I laid him down so that I could distract his brain in some way from what was occurring in his body. So I had him lay down, and then I gave his different parts of the arm different signals and stimulation. Like I moved it all around and like patted his head in different places just to distract him. And there's more. I could go in depth. I mean, that was another 8 years of background of studying physiology and body work. No need to go too far into that. But basically, I distracted his brain, and then I just said, "Hey, move your arm," and he just instantly moved it correctly.
My arms were like this. I could probably lift them this high, and like I was like able to do like those motions.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was all about just disconnecting from basically his current reality.
I'm guessing the reason we couldn't get my legs to move is because that's a harder thing to disconnect, you know?
I believe so.
It's like that's something you have to plant down and like walk. You have to think about walking. You don't have to really think about your arms because they're connected to the base of your body. I don't know.
I think if we would have like, you know, if there would have been an emergency situation that was instantaneous that you had to deal with, I think it's possible you would have just stood right up. Yeah. Because the mind is a really powerful thing, and sometimes, depending on what's going on, it can get in the way. So it was really cool that we were able to work through it.
It was really interesting, period. Something else you say, you don't have time to fix your flaws.
Yeah. Don't waste time on all your faults. So you have an infinite number of flaws. You are an infinitely flawed creature. And you have a finite number of skills. And so you can either work on the infinite problem, where you could get lost forever, or you could work on the solution that's visible and available to you. And so I like to say 80% of your time should be working on your strengths, and 20% of your time should be working on your weaknesses. Why do you work on your weaknesses? The same reason you go to the gym. You're not going to the gym to make a living. Most people aren't. You're going to the gym to make yourself a more well-rounded person. And so you have weaknesses you should take some time to work on, but don't make it your day job. Your day job should be the thing that you can do so easily you don't even have to think about it, preferably. It should be the thing that you're excellent at. And so go find the things that you are excellent in, and then give yourself a little side education.
And it's usually just one thing that people are good at, you would say, right? Maybe 2 to 3?
I think it differs. I think there's a pretty wide variety there. It's more about where your mind is focused. right? Because what you just did was another binary of, okay, the solution is now find the one thing that I can do and do that. And then it's all fixed. And it's not that. It's how do I lean my mind towards a bias of my strengths? When I walk into a situation and somebody provides me with a problem where they're like, hey, like, let's say you're a leader and somebody provides a problem, like, we need to solve this problem. Your bias should be, how do I solve this with my strengths? Right? Oh, my strength is delegation. Oh, well, let me go find the person who can do it. Oh, my strength is empathy. Okay, so let me make sure that I understand the problem deeply before I move on, right? I understand problems better than other people. Okay, make sure you understand problems when you work on them. Or I execute really well. Okay, you should be using that. It doesn't mean you don't, if you're low in empathy, you shouldn't develop some. If you're low in execution, you shouldn't develop some. You should. But whatever you naturally are good at, you should start to lean towards in your bias just to get things done. And the reality is, most of us do this unconsciously. Most of us have been leaning on our strengths since childhood to the degree that we don't even see our strengths. Right? Like, you don't know that you're the social butterfly. You don't know the level of social skills that you have when that's truly your survival strategy.
Scientific. So we're biologically wired to ignore the things we're best at.
That's right. Yeah. You're because humans are habit-forming creatures, and we have been using the things we're best at since childhood. And because we're constantly trying to solve new problems, once we form those habits, we stop thinking about them. And so the things that you are the most talented at, you haven't thought about since childhood. And if you want to really tap into your own personal power, you need to take the time to understand what those things are and start to magnify them instead of spending all of your time focusing on all the problems in your life.
A question that another mentor of mine often asks is, what did you want to be when you were 10 years old or 13 years old or 16 perhaps? And that kind of leads into him saying, maybe you should pursue a career, extrapolate that out. But I think an important thing to ask as well is, what were you good at when you were a kid?
Yeah, I wanted a farm with like 20 children. So that's playing out really well.
I think you still want that though. But
no, actually it does play out, because what it meant was I actually desired community. I desired my network, right? And that is actually true. Like, I get my success through sort of a tight-knit network. It's not through wide networks. And I actually had to learn that. I had to learn that I needed a small community of people that were close to me in order for me to succeed. So there's actually some truth to that one.
When you were 13, what were you good at?
Yeah, and you're correct. That is another really good one. I was good at ideas. I was creative. And I was extremely empathetic. And sure enough, these are some of the key things that I use every day to live my life. And when I denied them, when I was in music school, all of the standards were around doing things specifically right, technique. High technical ability was valued. And I struggled so much because that wasn't my strength. And as an adult, I started to understand that I was trying to make myself live up to standards that were somebody else's standards. And I started to realize, oh, these people couldn't hold a candle to me creatively. They couldn't hold a candle to me conceptually. And I started to say, okay, well, how can I use concepts and creativity to get an edge in life? And so I started to develop my edge that way, and I started to win.
My two were performance and cheat codes, which I think we've
That
identified
tracks.
well that those are things I like to utilize still. This is a fun one. You said there are two kinds of people: the ones that only hear the words in a song and ignore the music, and the ones that only hear the music but can't hear the words.
Yeah. The people who only hear the words usually think through a logical framework. And the ones who only hear the music usually think through an emotional framework. And it's important to understand the different types of people so that you can have better relationships. And if you understand that about yourself, you can understand your own thinking better and how you can sort through problems.
What do you hear?
I hear the music first. That's how I know I'm feeling first. I have to translate into English. Fun fact about me. I used to think in print. I used to, because when I was young, I learned how to read. I cried every single day of my reading lessons until I learned how to read, and then I became a bookworm. And I read so much that my written vocabulary increased faster than my spoken vocabulary. And so I started to think visually in the words. And so somebody would ask me a question, and I would see the answer, and I'd have to read it off to them. And so I'd mispronounce words that I'd never spoken before.
Yeah.
But yeah, I used to think in print. That was a fun era
But you
of
don't
childhood.
think like that anymore?
No, I don't think like that anymore. Generally speaking, I think in like a collection of thoughts, English sensations, feelings. I used to think in music all the time. But it's sort of an amalgamation. That's usually if somebody's thinking and feeling, it's a collection of different things that creates sort of a sensation. And then I have to translate that into English.
When you picture an apple, what do you see? Have you seen this before?
Oh, I'm not sure that I have.
Yeah. Describe to me when I say apple, what pops in your head?
Oh, so yeah, when I think of an apple, it's a morphing object. It used to drive me crazy in art school. You do the exercise of like trying to do like some sort of still life where you look at a thing and you copy it exactly. And then you can turn this into a meditation where you try to look at an object, close your eyes, and hold that object in your mind. I can't do it at all. If I like the Eastern meditation of put a teacup in front of you and look at it and close your eyes and hold the image of the teacup in your mind, I look at that teacup, I close my eyes, and the thing melts. It can't hold its shape. I've never been able to get it to hold its shape. So my my visual memory is I can remember what something looks like, but my ability to hold solid images in my mind is very low.
Well, close your eyes for a second and describe to me an apple. What do you see right now?
So for a second, it looked like an apple, and then it morphed.
What do you mean by it looked like an apple? Like
I
an
saw,
emoji? Like a drawing?
Oh, it looked like a still life drawing of an apple.
A still life drawing of an
Like
apple.
you know, the classic like realism painting of an apple. Yeah, or a photograph.
Got you. Yeah, some people are only able to see an apple they've seen before. Some people see kind of like an extrapolation of the thing, kind of like what you're describing. Like an emoji. Yeah, the symbology of it.
Yeah.
Like kind of like a hieroglyph. And then some people like even see like black and white version of it, which is really interesting. But yeah, it says something about you. I can't quite remember what it is. I think it's something to do with the logical emotionality thing. But yeah, I definitely see like an emoji or something.
I want people in the comments to tell me what that means about me.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, it constantly morphs. Visuals are very hard to keep hold of.
If you want above average results, you don't get to do average things.
Yeah, if you want a different life, you don't get to live the life that everybody else wants. Average is works at Walmart. Average is overweight. Average is not handling your finances. And if you want to work at Walmart, be overweight, and not handle your finances, then do what everybody else does. But if you want a different life, you got to choose a different path. You've got to make different decisions that they might not agree with.
For the average person, if they want to improve their life 10%, do you think the steps to do that are nearly as hard as they think?
No, because the path is to improve your life 1% and then do it again. If you want to make your life into something that is beyond your wildest dreams, then you start by taking the step that is more humble than you're willing to take. If you can take that step and do it again tomorrow, then you can do something that nobody else is willing to do.
Do you think if you're not improving, you're regressing usually?
Yeah, the old expression is if you're not growing, you're dying. And that's fundamentally true because there are no straight lines in nature. Meaning, you're always moving up or down. And if you can't see yourself visually improving, then you're probably regressing. You're probably doing worse. And so, because you can never really hold yourself on a straight and narrow path that is the same always because we are not robots, you need to bias yourself towards growth. Lean in the direction of progress. Make it so that that's the normal direction you try to take.
I have a more interesting one.
Okay.
You're really passionate about this one. You don't think scrolling on TikTok is rest? People who watch TV aren't resting. Scrolling on social media isn't resting. Why is that not rest?
Rest is putting yourself in a situation where your body can recover. I don't know about you, but after I've scrolled TikTok for 3 hours, I don't feel recovered. I feel like I ran a digital marathon.
Yeah.
And so if you want to be productive, you need to learn how to increase the quality of your rest because the rest directly affects the performance. TikTok, Netflix, these are things that are in between work and rest. They are not the work, and they do not increase your recovery. They are a pause. And sometimes it's nice to take a pause, but you just need to understand that that's not the thing that's going to turn you into
Are they
cutting.
even a pause, though, if they drain your energy? Like, isn't that basically, like, people want to be motivated, but you're motivated to watch TikTok and expunge energy from yourself, you know?
Mm-hmm.
If it's not a restful activity, it has to be an energy draining one.
Oh, it's an energy draining activity. Absolutely. I mean, it's a pause from work. It's all these Netflix, Facebook, TikTok, all of these activities drain your energy.
What are restful activities?
The sauna, cuddles, hanging out with your guys, relaxing, getting a massage, drinking a cup of tea, the good stuff. Being wrapped around a blanket.
Someone like my sister, she works long hours, but after she wants to watch Netflix to relax, like, how can I convince her that that isn't relaxing when she feels as though it is? Is it because she's setting an intention to relax?
Watching Netflix for hours on end to relax isn't rest. It's feeding your addiction for high stimulation activity while reducing the effort required to get it. It still requires effort. You have to stare at the screen and let the screen melt your eyeballs.
Yeah.
So it's not rest. It's just less work than work.
Some people perceive time differently. The example you used in your video was an apple.
Some people, if you ask them if they would like an apple and they say, "No, I hate apples," that means over the course of my life, I have had multiple occasions where I've eaten apples and I disliked it every time, and therefore I would not like an apple. Thank you very much. That is somebody who perceives time through a linear framework. Then there are other people who perceive time through an awareness framework where they are in the moment. And if that person says, "I hate apples," then what they are saying is, over the course of my life, I have experienced apples many times. I know what they taste like. And in this moment, an apple sounds like a terrible thing. And so I hate apples. And if you understand these two different frameworks, then you'll understand why somebody seems like they're changing subjects quickly. It's because they're in the moment. And then you can understand when somebody is pulling from their past experience to get the conclusion that they're talking about today.
It's super helpful in relationships. I mean, if you suggest to your girl, maybe hey, do you want to go on a roller coaster together today? And she's tired, and you don't frame it in an exciting way and don't act as though it's a good idea, she'll be much less likely to go to, or she'll say, no, I don't like roller coasters. No, I don't like roller coasters. But she might actually like roller coasters in a different context, basically.
Correct. Because she knows what roller coasters are, and today she doesn't like them.
Mm.
And a lot of people see this as, a lot of people who think logically feel like this is, they're being lied to. But it's really, somebody is just living a completely different life than you. And for somebody who says, I don't like roller coasters, they're saying, today I don't like roller coasters. Tomorrow they might like roller coasters.
Yeah. What do you think about the linear thinking people who think it is like spottiness or lying, or like how can they navigate that better?
Learn how to relax a little bit.
Yeah.
And appreciate that almost all of the fun comes from the people who think the other way. And yeah, it might frustrate you that they're not following your logic path, but also, what's the point of logic? It's just to keep us supported, to have some fun.
So would you like an apple?
No thanks. I don't like apples.
Right now?
Today.
Today. Interesting. You say there are only 2 religions on earth.
Yeah. So the first religion is to look up at the highest good that you can imagine and align yourself with it. Forget about your day-to-day existence. Don't worry about it. Just do the work to get to the ideal that you believe in. This is Western religion. This is all of the religions that believe in the single God theory and even the multiple gods and goddesses. It's this light in the sky that you align yourself with so that you can become a better person. The second religion is to sit down on the ground and become aware of the smallest thing you can possibly become aware of, like your breath. Start to notice how your breath interacts with your body, and then notice your sensations, your feelings, everything around you, until you start to feel what you should do next. You can start to feel into your decisions and realize that this is a better decision and this is a worse one, because you get better and worse results. And through this process, eventually your awareness will grow so much that you start to align with and become one with this God concept that the other religion was talking about.
And this is Buddhism.
And that's Eastern religion, Buddhism, other energetic philosophies. Pretty much all of our thought process can be filtered through one or the other of these 2 ways of thinking.
I asked you this a long time ago.
Ooh.
A lot of entrepreneurs are obsessed with scale, and a lot of entrepreneurs are obsessed with mindset. What's the most scalable version of mindset?
Oh man, I don't remember what I said.
You said other people seeing you as having an elite mindset, and the ability past that, the ability to shift another's mindset.
Yeah, if you want to scale, you have to learn how to scale yourself. And then the ultimate version of scaling yourself is to scale everyone around you. And so you first have to learn how to have a vision and respond to it within yourself. And then you have to learn how to embody that vision so much that everyone around you start to embody it. And so the most scalable mindset is to have all of the belief, all of the manifestation, all of the skill set down where it's like, oh man, I think and this occurs, and that's just the way I'm going to live in this world. And then you start to teach the people around you that this is the type of person that you are. And so now other people will start to have faith in the way that you operate, and that faith will support them in manifesting your vision as powerfully as you do. And so if you think and therefore you can do, and then everyone else knows that if you think, then you can do, then when you think, they will do.
And then eventually they think that they can do.
Yes, this is how you help other people rise as well. Because you, in the best version of this, through their faith in you, then you say, hey, look, you have the same capacity. Through their faith in you, they start to have the experience of better execution. And then you say, look, you've got this stuff within you. You can do it too.
The most dangerous idea you can think is that nobody would know.
It gives you the excuse. to slip up. It gives you the justification for failure. Nobody would know that you ate that chocolate bar. Nobody would know that you skipped the gym. Nobody would know that you manipulated that situation. This is deathly dangerous, not just because it allows you to engage in worse behavior, but because it implies that somebody else knowing is what controls your behavior.
Yeah.
And so who would know? You would know. And you should hold the highest standard for yourself of anyone. And so you're not a child who's supposed to live up to the expectations of the people around you. And if nobody's watching, then you can go be a bad boy. You're an adult. And so go make yourself proud and go take the actions that you know are right. And then walk around in the world proudly knowing that you did it.
I guess if you recognize that no one's judgment matters, you also recognize no one's coming to save you. So you have to hold yourself fully accountable.
Yeah, that's a different subject altogether. Because the reality is no one would know. But the idea of no one would know is a terrible excuse for bad behavior. And it's a wonderful opportunity to understand that other people's judgment doesn't matter.
This kind of leads into a thought I had yesterday, and this is an interesting one. I wrote this down for myself. Maybe you'll find it humorous. Imagine that hell is watching your life play out after you die. You get to see the journeys of all the people you know, all their kids, but the last time someone says your name is the moment you have to stop watching. What would your legacy look like?
Ooh, the last time someone says your name, like once your legacy is played out, like after you're dead. Ooh.
It's an interesting hell because it's like you don't get to watch your life that long if you didn't leave much legacy. But if you left a bad one, you're forced to suffer and watch it eternally. And if you left a good one, then it's longer, more infinite, and it's a mostly positive experience.
I hope that my legacy is my ideas and how it shapes people's ability to execute in the world. I think legacy is important. And I ask myself a lot, what would happen if legacy were cool? Right now, Lambos and tall buildings are cool.
Yeah.
What if it was cool to build a mansion that was going to last 1,000 years? Like, it wasn't the biggest mansion, it wasn't the fanciest mansion, but the bragging right when, people walk in the door and they say, "Wow, this is a really cool mansion," as you say, "Thanks, I built it to last 1,000 years." What kind of wealth and opportunity would that create for future generations? What kind of power would that provide to humanity? I think that would be an amazing thing. And
how do you live your life to optimize for legacy?
I try to act in a way that compounds. I try to take the actions that would enable me to make greater actions in the future. I try to make the decisions that make me more capable of making decisions. I try to, in terms of my investment philosophy, take the risk that enables me to take more risks over time. How do you become capable of more risk over time? To me, this is one of the fundamental questions. Because you can have no progress without risk. And so therefore you need to become more and more capable of taking the risk. And so I hope that my legacy is something that enables more people to take the shot. And I hope that humanity's legacy as a whole is the same thing.
It's really interesting. You were the first person to open my eyes about investing in a way that made sense. One of your videos, you talk about instead of going to college, take the interest on the student loans and just put it in the stock market And then by the time you're 65, you have $2 million, something along those lines. And a lot of people hear that and they're like, well, do I want $2 million when I'm 65? It's like, no, you can't even use that. But if you know you have your retirement taken care of and you're 40, like you might be a little riskier with the things you do today, which might enable you to have some kind of compounding return or some great investment opportunities, some interesting business. So if you know you have some of the future taken care of, you can take care of the present in a way that's more risky.
I rant about this all the time. You don't start an investment portfolio for your retirement because you want to retire. You start an investment portfolio so that you aren't walking around afraid that you're going to eat dog food when you're 65.
Yeah.
It's so that you can let go of the fear of destitution, of complete poverty, and realize that things are handled to a degree and you're safe so you can go take some risks.
If you knew you would receive $10 million in 10 years, how would you behave in these 10 years, perhaps?
Yeah, you would behave differently. You would make different choices if you knew that your future was handled. So go handle your future so that you can actually really think about the present and create a better one.
Here are a list of the most challenging questions I've asked you.
Ooh.
I'll start with the one that threw me off. Do you think the one is real?
I think there can be a one, but the concept of the one is bullshit. There can be a one in the sense that you can find someone that you love and that you partner with, and that is your person. It's bullshit in the sense that all humans are just humans. And there is a skill of relationship that you can develop. And so if you think in terms of the one, usually what happens is you stop thinking in terms of the skill of relationship and you start looking for the one.
Mm-hmm.
And so now your ability to be a desirable person stays stagnant. Because you're going, oh, I don't need to be better at relationships. I just need to find my person.
Yeah.
But if you let go of the idea of the one and say, okay, well, that could occur. I could find somebody maybe, but that's not what I'm going to depend on. What I'm going to depend on is becoming a desirable person and learning how to love.
You don't choose the one. You make the one.
Correct.
And you make the one by building yourself and eventually building that other person into the one.
It comes down to two of the different ways to accomplish something. One is you can set out to accomplish the specific thing that you're trying to accomplish. That's the idea of the one. The other is you can set yourself up in a situation that increases the likelihood of a positive outcome that you desire.
Mm.
And so that's letting go of the idea of the one.
Do you disagree with the concept? I don't know if it's Aristotle or Pythagoras, but the fastest way between 2 points is a straight line.
Ah, okay. So it's the fastest way if you can manage it, right? It's the fastest way between 2 points is a straight line if you can travel that straight line. And so you have to ask yourself, are you that person? Is that straight line right through 20 brick walls? If it is, then maybe you just want to go around the block. Right? And so sometimes you want to go for the specific goal that you're trying to accomplish. And sometimes you just want to up yourself, up your game as a human, so that you can find your way around all of the obstacles of your life to the outcome that you want.
Optimize for optionality over optimizing for the destination.
Optimize for luck.
How can you optimize for luck?
You optimize for luck by combining hard work with openness. And most people do one or the other. Most people either say, I'm just going to wait and be open to opportunity. And I know that it's out there and it's going to come to me. And then the other people say, there's no such thing as luck. Opportunity doesn't come your way, and you need to earn what you get. And so I'm just going to work until I get it. Well, the person who waits around for their opportunity doesn't become a better person. And so they don't become worthy of the goal that they're trying to achieve. They don't become capable of executing on that goal. The person who just puts their heads down and works, they increase their ability to execute, but their head is down and they can't see opportunities. They can't see the possibilities. And so they miss opportunities when they're put right in front of their face. And so the way you optimize for luck is you combine hard work and openness. You become a person who is willing to put their head down and do the work, but also you're willing to relax and dream and go, hey.
I call it ostrich theory.
Ostrich theory.
Like an ostrich puts their head in the sand to protect itself. But like imagine if, I don't know, a bunch of gold just appeared while your head was in the sand. You wouldn't act on it. But if your head's out of the sand always, then like you're not protecting yourself in that other way.
And musicians will grind it out for years trying to get signed with a particular record label. And then they'll get so good that some other record label will come up to them and say, hey, you're really good. Want us to sign you? And then they'll say no. Because they'll go, oh, well, I wanted to get signed by this specific label. And it's like, you just got the opportunity to be a rock star. What the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
And we do this in relationships where you go like, oh, I'm looking for the one. And this girl comes up that's amazing. And she doesn't have all of the exact characteristics that you were looking for. She goes, hey, you want to have a good dinner? You want to hang out? And you go, oh, no, sorry, I'm looking for the one. It's like, what?
You could have made her the one. Or she
She
might
was
have
right
led
there.
you down the direction of creating yourself into the person that is capable of getting the one you want.
Yeah, she either could become the one, or your relationship with her would educate you into and uplift you into the person who would become worthy of the one.
That's the beauty of relationships. If you knew that the person you met you were going to marry and be with forever, you wouldn't enter it. But if you knew that the person you met you wouldn't marry, you wouldn't enter it. It's kind of that in-between that makes a relationship interesting to begin with. But challenging question number 2. Josh, is God real?
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, or does it matter?
Does it matter?
I think if a question is asked so many times, then eventually it has to matter a little bit.
My favorite answer to this question is wrong question. I think a really good question at this point in history is, why does religion exist? And it turns out it exists for really good reasons. And so we're now at a time in history where we're questioning if God is real, if God can be scientifically validated. And I think a more useful question is to ask yourself, is it useful to act as if God is real? Because we have thousands of years of history of religion being a thing that keeps people going. And so when you ask this question, is God real? You need to first understand the dangers. And so if you're going to ask that question, is God real? You need to ask yourself if you're doing a fun thought game or if you're trying to decide how you're going to live your life. And if you want to play the thought game, great. But if you want to live your life and have principles to go by, I think it's useful to act as though he is, regardless of whether he is. Do you want to know my religion?
Yeah.
Be the guy that God would want to have a beer with.
Why?
Because throughout history, in most religions, the people that are looked up to and praised are not spoken of in terms of respect or nobility. They're spoken of in terms of love and affection. And so God was just looking for a guy who could hang.
He's looking for a friend.
He's looking for a friend.
And one that he'd like to be with.
Yeah, and what is that? It's somebody who lives life to the fullest. And so my religion is to live the best life that I can possibly live.
Josh, you said women don't want to learn anything. They want to discover something.
And men don't want to discover anything. They want to understand.
Tell me about women wanting to discover.
So women tend to come from a place of feeling. And so their reality shifts from one now to the next now, every minute, every second. And the way most people think of learning or speak about it is in a linear process, which is connecting multiple nows. But women often prefer a being process. And so to discover is to go from one place of being to the next place of being, where I didn't know this thing and now I know this thing. And so that's a place of delight for the feminine.
So how would you explain 2 + 2 to me versus a feminine, perhaps?
You'd explain it the same way, but a guy is going to focus more on the linear process. And the girl is going to focus more on the conceptual discovery of the principle.
How does that relate to survivalship? Because if you teach a woman, I don't know, this is how you cook a steak. A man learns that and they're like, okay, I know how to cook a steak now, and I'm going to integrate that for survival. Does a woman interpret it the same way?
Yeah, men and women are very, very close. They just lean with their biases in a different direction. And so the general process is going to be the same, but the way she perceives it is going to be one of, I was this person who didn't know how to cook a steak, and now I am a person who knows how to cook a steak. They shift identity more completely as they learn.
They also might attach feeling to it. They might feel safer, but a man feels more capable.
Usually.
A man naturally desires many women, or a woman that is many women.
Yes.
What does that mean?
In terms of basic mating strategies, men operate best. Men's genes would pass on the most if they were with many women. And so there's a natural preference towards the concept of many women.
What is a woman that is many women?
There's a deeper desire inside the masculine beyond just reproduction that is to experience the beauty of the universe. And the idea that one woman can be many women is that within every woman is the capacity for the infinite beauty of the universe.
Give me examples of like a woman that is many women. Like what are different states of being that she could have?
She can be the athlete, the scholar, the slut, and the magician. She can be the witch and the mother. She can be the lover and the defender.
Do women crave a man that is many men?
Just as the feminine spreads out towards infinity, the masculine pulls in towards infinity. And so women often desire the man who is the ultimate one man. And so he is completely steadfast in who he is, in his identity. It doesn't mean he can't dance and play, but he knows who he is, and he is that.
Women prefer archetypes.
Archetypes are all possible things, so that
They prefer an archetype. You know, there was that study done about
Yes.
the werewolf, vampire, pirate thing.
yes, women, but that's men as well. Both men and women lean towards particular archetypes.
But men lean toward a multiplicity of those archetypes, correct?
Yes, and women lean towards a stability of the archetype.
There's no stability in a man that is many men.
Unless he knows that he is many men. This is a really side note, if it's interesting. This is actually connected to the classic internet argument of whether or not a man should be able to show his emotions.
Yeah.
Men often think that they shouldn't be able to share emotions around women that they're in relationships with because they say women perceive it as weak, and then they lose status and the relationship falls apart.
Men shouldn't cry.
Men shouldn't cry. It's bullshit. The reality is, if you believe that it is weak, then you shouldn't do it. Because when you have a belief that you showing your emotion is weakness, then you are breaking away from the man that you are every time you cry. And the person and your girl knows this. She can feel it. But if you know that you are a man who can cry and that you maintain your strength within that, you'll just get more respect, because that's an even more powerful position, which is, I am so strong, I can be vulnerable.
Stability and control outweighs any emotionality shown.
Correct. Stability and control are shorthand, actually. They're symbols for what it really is.
What is it?
To really be in your masculine identity is to consciously choose what is. It's to be wholly realistic. So much so that you accept that you have emotions. You accept that there is logic that you can think through. And you stay strong in your path regardless. The outcome of all of that is stability and control. It's not actually stability and control. Stability and control is a symptom, not a cause.
I don't want to break your brain any further by asking you such open-ended questions, but because I know it hurts you the way you think. Josh, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Let go of your dreams, because they can destroy you. When I was younger, I wanted to be a rock star. And I believed it, and I manifested towards it, and I worked it. But it consumed me, and I was so obsessed with it that I couldn't function in my day-to-day life. It wasn't empowering, it was debilitating. If you want to be a movie star and you want to walk on red carpets and you're washing dishes in the back of Joe's Crab Shack and you're too obsessed with your dream, then every dish you wash is a failure. And that was what was happening to me. But one day, I faced up the fact that I wasn't getting the outcomes that I wanted to get, and I couldn't do the dream that I wanted to do. And I said, look, you're not getting it done. And as much as you want to do this, all evidence points to that you don't know how. And that left space for the question, what could you do? What could you do today that would make tomorrow better? And when you have that mindset and you're working in the back of Joe's Scrap Shack washing dishes, now every plate you wash has an opportunity to move you towards your future. And that's exactly what happened in my life, was I started to take the steps that would make tomorrow better. And that's how I got where I am today.
Beautifully said. I guess by that same token, what's the worst piece of advice you've ever received?
Ooh. I can't think of a specific directive, but I can think of a mindset that people teach. Yeah, I can't think of a directive, but I can think of a mindset that people teach that's just awful. And it's that there are absolute solutions for everything.
People think too binary.
When you get stuck in believing that everything is right or wrong, don't get me wrong, I think right and wrong exist. I just think they exist in infinite shades of gray. Black and white exists. It just exists in infinite shades of gray. If you get stuck thinking that you are going to find the black answer and the white answer, then you're going to obsess trying to find them. And you're not going to be invested in, and you're not going to pay attention to the world around you and live your life. I don't know. I feel like I explained that poorly, but I find that I think if we look for the complete perfect solution, we often find no solution at all. But if we're willing to look for the solution that's ugly and full of flaws and also has immense beauty in it, we can find it.
If you often retrace your steps and look at your success, you find that the way that you got there was not the black or white solution. It was a mixture of things. And
every single time.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody that said, I have a great idea. I'm just going to go do this idea and then it'll be done and it'll be perfect. I only know people that say, I have a great idea, and then they dive into it and they go, oh shit, I didn't know it was going to work out that way. And then they work for the next 10 years trying different things until they come to some amazing, beautiful new result that then people write about and say, wow, didn't he have a perfect plan?
Josh, I said at the beginning of this podcast, you are the most impressive person I've ever met. I ask this question to every guest. Who's the most impressive person you've ever met?
That's getting harder and harder because I'm meeting more and more interesting people. I think Robert Greene was really amazing. It was so good to get to know him a little bit because he's a person who has a heart of gold and talks about power. People think that he talks about things that are Machiavellian, but he's really just trying to understand the world and show people how to get better outcomes. And then the other one might be my Russian violin teacher.
Tell me more about Robert first. What characteristics or traits do you value in Robert that you don't see in yourself?
I think Robert has an amazing acceptance of the way things are. His books are all about what is, not what should be. Under the idea that, hey, if you know what is, then you can probably get a better should be.
People often skip the introduction to the laws of power, where he states that manipulation is neither good nor bad. It just is.
When I had him on the podcast, I started by telling him, the introduction to your book is one of the best pieces of writing I've ever read. I've read a lot of words.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. Power is not good or bad. It is. And if you understand that, you can pick it up and you can use it for good.
Yeah. Who was your Russian violin teacher?
He was a teacher that was he was a prodigy, and then he was one of the best violinists in Europe. And then he retired to go fishing in Florida and just taught at the community college where I went to school as a youngster because he felt like it. He was amazing. And he once told me, look, if I were a baker, I would just try to do that as well as I played the violin. He didn't think of art as some piece of magic. He thought of it as something that he just did. And it was what he was supposed to do. He'd gotten a lot of education in it when he was young, and so it was the opportunity available to him. And so he just went, I'll do my humble best. And I really admire that.
Last thing, what's your mission?
My mission. My current mission is to grow, lead, teach, and become more capable of turning my creative visions into reality over time. And have fun doing it.
Well, everyone, this has been your guest, Josh Terry. Where can people find you?
Find me at Josh Terry Plays across all social media.
That's Josh Terry Plays. Well, thanks for coming on, Josh. Appreciate you, man.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. See you guys.